In Ecclesiastes, we're still in the Old Testament, Ecclesiastes 9, as the chapter begins, Solomon is writing about wisdom being in the palm of God's hand. In verse 10, he talks about wisdom, doing things with your might, with your ability, with your vigor, with your substance, with the power that you have. Again, there's P's all over the place. But one of my favorite Old Testament little parables is in Ecclesiastes 9. Would you read verses in chapter 9? Would you read verses 13 through 18? These verses had a major impact on me in the early 90s.
I'm sorry, Ecclesiastes 9 what?
Verses 13 through 18.
This wisdom I have also seen under the sun, and it seems great to me. There was a little city with few men in it, and a great king came against it. He sledged it and built great snares around it. Now there was found in it a poor wise man, and he by his wisdom delivered the city. Yet no one remembered the same poor man. Then I said, wisdom is better than strength. Nevertheless, the poor man's wisdom is despised, and his words are not heard. Words of the wise spoken quietly should be heard, rather than the shout of a ruler of fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good.
That's great, isn't it?
Beautiful.
But did you notice over and over again what this man is referred to as?
Poor wise man?
A poor man.
Mm-hmm. Poor wise man.
Yeah. You see, I think that when we ask for wisdom, like James says, if we've got everything we already need, where's it going to fit into our lives? We don't need it, really. We might ask for it, but we don't need it, because we already know what we're going to do anyway. Because we've been sucking off the knowledge of good and evil an awful lot. So we're already up and running with the knowledge part of it. There's an inference made here that place of being without keeps us in a position of being able to ask for wisdom. In our poverty, we are made rich. In our what some might consider, a poor man, they didn't listen to him. He's got nothing. He's a poor man. But he's wise. Because he's poor. So, in other words, when it comes to wisdom, wisdom finds a great resting place with the poor. When Jesus starts, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. We realize that this poorness, this poverty, if you would, is a place where wisdom rests comfortably, quietly, and is able to deliver cities. Wisdom is better than weapons of warfare. Chapter 10 goes on. There's several more references to wisdom. Would you read in chapter 10, verse 10 in Ecclesiastes?
Sure. If the axe is dull and one does not sharpen the edge, then he must use more strength. But wisdom brings success.
That's great. Why don't you sharpen the axe? Be wise. When you just go about doing things with a dull axe head, it requires a lot more strength. In other words, we're talking about profit here. Wisdom is profitable. It's a profitable thing to have and to exercise, to swing, if you would. A lot less work, to be honest with you, in the sense of not having to swing it so many times. When you put that in conjunction with what John the Baptist said at Jesus' water baptism, when he said the axe is being laid at the root, and he's referring to Jesus. Wisdom has come. Wisdom is about to hack down the foolishness of man's wisdom and reveal it for what it is, and reveal the wisdom of God for who he is. Same axe we're talking about. Man's axe is dull. It just doesn't get the job done. God's axe, right to the root. I was in pastoral ministry for a while before I realized I was hacking away. This can't be right. What I was doing was taking a branch here, a branch there, a branch here, a leaf there, and it was like the Holy Spirit says, at what point are you going to go for the root? Because until you deal with root issues, until they're dealt with, all you're doing is giving the tree a good pruning and it grows back even stronger. Hello? You need to get to the root. And that's what Jesus does. He gets to the root of our lack of love, that we don't know how much we're actually loved by God. Our fears, perfect love casts out fear. Our anger, he asked the question, why are you so angry? Let's talk about it. We got to deal with it. You can't go on like this. He gets to the root of things. He's just not interested in anything else but the root. And that's what he gets to, because that's where the profit is. Profitability. Jesus, I've already mentioned the parable of the wise and the foolish virgins and the wise man who digs deep and all that. There's a connection between the two of them. Not just that they're at the beginning and the end of Jesus' ministry, but both of them talk about being prepared. They said wisdom pursues a plan. Why? Because we need to follow through with it and we need to prepare. The guy who's digging deep and building knows that if he builds on the truth, he's prepared for the storm when it comes. He's prepared for the storm, and the storm does come. Somebody said a couple weeks ago, when we were talking about this, they said, wow, the storm comes to both guys. I said, yeah, being a Christian doesn't exempt you from storms. Storms come. What does happen is if we have heard and do, hear and obey, when the storms come, the house doesn't fall. It shakes, it rattles, it's a bit of a mess to put the stuff back in the walls when we're done. But we don't crumble. We don't fall to the ground. Ba-boom, we're done. The wise and the foolish virgins. However you interpret the parable, the bottom line is that the foolish virgins were not prepared. They didn't have oil. And they knew they needed oil. It's an intriguing scenario. They needed the oil, but they didn't have it. They didn't get prepared. The wise virgins were prepared. They had oil. There's a lot more, obviously, to the parable, but that jumps out, preparation. Now, I just spit out a whole bunch of P's between pleasant ways, paths of peace, prudence, pursuing a plan, in the palm of God's hand, the poor man, the power, the profitability, being prepared. They're all different things. They're in the notes, and they're for meditation, really. My recommendation would be to go back and read these a bit and pray about them. Not just for knowing God's direction, although they're great for knowing God's direction, but just for knowing God, knowing wisdom, knowing the qualities of them that help us to make decisions in a number of different ways. There's a lot more we could do from 1 Corinthians, chapters 1 through 3, Ephesians 5. There's a lot more going on. But I said a little while ago that in James, the 3rd chapter, he gives a really good set of verses on man's wisdom and God's wisdom. So I'm going to close tonight. We're done. I'm just going to close by reading from the Message, because again, in the Message, Eugene Peterson writes in a way that I think is very 21st century and phrases things in a way I think they just have a little bit, we understand it a little bit better, I think. So I think I'm being wise. You can tell me when I'm done. Where are we? James, the 3rd chapter. And I'm reading 13 through 18. If you want to follow along in your own Bibles, James, the 3rd chapter, 13 through 18. He starts with a question. Do you want to be counted wise? To build a reputation for wisdom? Well, here's what you do. Live well, live wisely, live humbly. It's the way you live, not the way you talk, that counts. Mean-spirited ambition isn't wisdom. Boasting that you are wise isn't wisdom. Twisting the truth to make yourselves sound wise isn't wisdom. It's the furthest thing from wisdom. It's animal cunning, devilish conniving. Whenever you're trying to look better than others or get the better of others, things fall apart and everyone ends up at each other's throats. Real wisdom, God's wisdom, begins with a holy life and is characterized by getting along with others. It is gentle and reasonable, overflowing with mercy and blessings, not hot one day and cold the next, not two-faced. You can develop a healthy, robust community that lives right with God and enjoy its results only if you do the hard work of getting along with each other, treating each other with dignity and honor. That's all right.
Man, I gotta get that book.
Yeah, you can get it. This is hardcover, but you can get it in a paperback.
I looked at in Burns and Noble for it, but it wasn't in stock, so
Yeah,
probably could get it on Amazon for cheaper.
yeah, and definitely. And I think more and more people are referring to it, not for any other reason, but a lot of times the way he writes, it's just like, yeah, I get that. Where a lot of other times the translations are a little bit harder. You have to work harder and do a lot more studying to be able to get a hold of what he's able to just throw out there.
But I bet if you take how he writes it and read like from the New King James Version or something, I bet it really I don't know, helps to...
Yeah, and that's exactly what I do. I spend 90% of my time in the New King James, but then I've got, on my computer, I've got, like your phones, I've got a variety of other translations, the Message being one of them, and then I've got all my Greek and Hebrew studies there as well, so I'm able to dig a little bit deeper into words and history of those words that I believe helps me to understand and convey to others as well.